And just as a quick reminder, so if I wanted, for instance, to use this image, the original image, even though this is an SVG, if you look up here, you can see the name is SVG. One of the problems that you might find with this SVG, and this is going to happen sometimes when people give you files, and which is one of the reasons that I did this for you, to you, whatever, is that you could go back and figure out how to fix this. As I showed you before, that this is still editable text. Like if I double clicked on this and I changed that to the letter you know G, I can actually edit that. And there's a problem because you see that it is problematic, right? So it actually still has the outline of the thing that was underneath it. And so what I need to do is I need to come in here and select this and sorry, there we go. And I need to make sure that I can get this into isolation mode. And now the other thing I want to show you is I open this panel up over here in my layers. If your layers isn't showing, you can go up under window and then go to layers. Okay. And then you'll notice that you can see certain things like if I turn the visibility off, that looks like an outline over here. Like where it says RIC, for some reason it collected RIC, and it's because I went up a version. This was made in I think 2017, CC 2017, and this is now 2018. And so sometimes what it'll do is it'll separate your text, and this is a really normal thing that will happen when you get files from people. And so if I turn off that visibility, you can see that that's just a stroke. And then you can see here, if I turn off that visibility, that is just a fill. And so I've got some really weird stuff going on here. I need to make sure that my objects that have strokes are also the objects that also are filled, so that they're not separate, because they might not align properly on the screen. And one of the things that you can do over here in the layers panel when you're in isolation mode is kind of helpful, is that you can visibly turn stuff off to see which things are actually, like I'm turning off all the things that don't look like strokes, but that look like fills over here in the preview mode, in the little thumbnail. And then I can make sure that in fact I'm correct about my assumptions, and all of those things that I just turned off are things that if I wanted, I could select them, right? And the way that you can, actually I need to turn everything back on here. Let's just turn everything off. And then if I turn everything back on like this, I can select them. So I'm going to go ahead and select all those things that I turned off. So if you click on this little circle out here in the right inside the layers panel, you can hold down the command key on a Mac or control on Windows, and you can select all of the ones. And then here, let's pull this over so that it's closer and you can see them better. You can select all of the ones that are just fills and not strokes. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to select all the ones that are only fills and not strokes. All right, and then I'm just going to throw those things away. And the way that I do that is that while those things are all selected, I just hit my delete key. Okay. Okay, and so before I fill these things, what I want to do now is I want to come over here and I want to select one of these objects just so I can see what color that is. I'm going to double click this foreground color and I'm going to copy this hexadecimal number, this FEFFD6. And now what I can do is I can select this whole group, right? It's already grouped together. And now I can just go over here and I can click the fill color and it gives me that fill color. And the thing that's nice is that now I can tell you with certainty that this is not an editable font. I created outlines, so they're just literally vector paths. So the person doesn't have to have that font on their computer. And the other thing is that now I know that the object that has the fill is also the same object that has the stroke. So I feel good about that. And then if I wanted to come over here, I can see these two objects. And if I want to simplify this, I can start to simplify these as well. One thing you might notice is that this object is separate from this object. So if I select both of them by holding down the Shift key like this, I can go over here to the Pathfinder. And if you don't see the Pathfinder, you can go to Window and then you can find Pathfinder right there. Anyway, I'm going to go to the Pathfinder, and while I have this little stem and this C shape, I'm going to click on this Unite option, and then it creates it as a single path. And so that makes it a much more efficient path. If I wanted to take these also, I could group those together, or not group, but I could unite them as well, so that now when I select them, it's one object. So that's one option as well. And then this is a fill, and it's a black fill, and then the one right here is that cream colored fill, and then the one in the back is actually a stroke, and it's actually, believe it or not in the back. If I were to do a reversal on this, it's actually, you can see in front of those other two circles. So if I wanted to, if I flip that back around, you see it here. Let's undo all that. You can see how far out this comes. I like, the stroke is pretty thick, and so one of the things that I might want to do, if I do Command R or Control R, it shows my rulers, and I can draw a ruler so that it's like right up here at the edge. I can draw guidelines. I should say guidelines, not ruler. I can draw guidelines here so that I can see kind of where the boundaries would be for my circle. And the reason I'm doing this is because if I want to sort of optimize something, if I want to take this this stroke and instead fill it, I want to be able to expand that out now all the way to the boundaries of those guides that I just drew. So I can take this corner, and if I click and hold, and I hold down Option and Shift, Option makes it, or Alt on Windows, Alt or Option will draw it out from the center, and Shift will constrain the proportions. So if I draw that out like that, now what I can do is I can say Object, and I can arrange, and I can send it to the back. So now I've got the exact same effect that I had before, but the difference now is that it's in the back and it's not a stroke, and it's more likely to align properly. So I'm going to get rid of my guides. I can go up here to View, and I can say Guides, Clear Guides. My guides are gone. And if I don't like the way that this is aligned, it seems like maybe, the center line, if I wanted to draw a guide, center line would be about right there. And I don't think that this is centered, so if I want to draw this down a little bit, I can kind of bump it down with my nudge keys, and that looks like it's more centered. Okay, and then again, I'm going to clear that guide. I'll get rid of my guide. And what's really important whenever you're doing this kind of stuff is that it's really good to keep your objects as simple as possible. You can also just select these and you can group them. So I can go to Object and I'll go to Group, and then that way it's all together. And I think that this is fine, and I can go ahead and save this file. So I'm going to save that file. I've optimized this SVG now. It's much, much better. And I can close this out. And now I can actually go and upload this new thing into my media library. So let's go ahead and select the files. And so if I look inside of my mockups, this is where I had my Canon Electric site files, and it was under logos and font. That's where I had mine, and I can do a quick view to see which one it was, and it's this one, I think. Yeah, this is the one that was the SVG. So I'm going to open that one, and we've got that one right here. And so now what I can do is if I click on this, it'll take me here, and I can grab this URL. This is the new URL. And now I can just go back into my widgets area, and I can update this, before I use the different SVG. Let's paste that one there, save it, and then we can go over here and do a test. And I know it's going to look different. Let's do a refresh here. And it's going to look different because, right, that's a different file, but it's also going to look different because, remember, I had all of this stuff. If you wanted to just take a really quick peek, we can right click this and inspect it, and we can just add something to the inspector. Let's go to the inspector style sheet, and let's paste it there. And then you see that that looks a little bit better. We've got this SVG now that doesn't look like it belongs up here. I'm not using the call tag, you know, the tagline here, and I could make some other changes. And anyway, and so this is where you would, you know, go and you would continue to work with your with your styling in your style sheet. And real quickly, I want to show you something else that I did. So I went ahead inside of here and I changed this so that I added a horizontal rule underneath my image that's in the footer. And I also added paragraph tags around this bit of information here. Okay, so this was all I had before, so I went ahead and I wrapped that in p tags so that I could easily target and style it. And then just really quickly, I'm going to show you the way that I'm going to style it. I'm just going to go here into my style sheet, and I'm not going to, you're not going to watch me type all this. I'm going to paste some styles that I chose, and I'm going to put it in the section 9.0 under widgets because technically it's under the footer widget. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to make a new comment that is going to be specific to the footer sidebar widget area. So let's do that. Okay, and then let's do that. And then I'm going to just paste a whole bunch of stuff, right? And then I'm going to show it to you. And then you're more than welcome to kind of take some cues from this if you want. But I've got something called, and I don't have to have this thing that says div. It's fine. I have footer widgets. It's an ID, and I already showed you this. I have my overflow hidden, and I've given it sort of a 80% black background. The 80% is a opacity. And then for all of these things, basically for all text, regular text, I've made the color, this sort of cream color. And then I went ahead and I gave all of the H1 widget titles a bottom margin of 2 rem. And then I also made the widget aside areas. I made them a width of 100%. This is going to be for the mobile view. I gave each of them a padding of about 2% and a top margin of 2em so that they'll easily separate from each other. And then I did a media query that kicks in at a 600 pixels, and so you could change this. It's actually 601. So that I have them float left and that width of 50%. This one right here is I'm using an aside the first, so it's using nth child and 1, meaning that it's the first child. And it basically is going to, for my purposes, accommodate the logo to align with the other widgets that are on the desktop view. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. So I have a margin top of 0. Then I have another media query that kicks in at 768. I think that originally I had it at 900. You could always muck around with this if you want. But basically it's at this point that the widgets go to 33 and 0.33%. And then these these are not inside of the media query. I also have some other stuff where I have a whole bunch of grouped selectors. I could just as easily have them like this so that it's easier to see what you're looking at. So block quotes, H1s, H2s, they have a left margin of 2.6 rem. And then for the image that has that footer logo, I'm telling it how big to be, that it's display block, no padding, no margin. The HR, the horizontal rule, I'm setting it to be a width of 75%, and it has an opacity of 50%. So that's how you set that at 0.5. And then lastly, I also went ahead and I told it the paragraph that is inside of that first widget that has, and specifically it targets the one that says custom HTML-2. It gives it a margin left of 12%. And let me show you. I'm going to save this. Let's put it up there, and then let's go and take a peek. Let's maybe look at this one. It's going to look like this. Okay, and then I do a refresh on this. This is how it looks. And so without that 12%, this would be like over here. You know, and if you wanted to check it out, you know, we can look at it in Inspector, and you can see that here's where it's got that element style, right? If I didn't have that, that's the way it would look. For instance, you know, I could pick different things, that HR, That's how bright it would be without the opacity. That's what the width would be without it being 75%, and so on and so on. If I wanted to pick this image file, you'll see why I chose to have, actually, let's go back here. Yeah, you'll see that I've got it display block and it pulls that up. I just wanted to go ahead and reset all the padding and everything automatically. It's display block, so it would do the width of 100. This one, all right, this is where I've got the nth child. If I take that off, you see what it does is it pops it down to give it room for where a title would go. So I'm telling it to go ahead and pull it all the way up. All right, so these are some of the things that I did. And then I left this place is going to get a video. I'm actually going to use a plugin to pull the video in, but I'll get to that later. That's going to conclude this video.